Okay, just a bit of a wrap-up of where things stand. There is the gear rack that I cut. I bent it to shape. And this brass here is a piece of a brass planter. Some sheet brass from a brass planter from Goodwill. I stuck it on the drill press and drilled a series of holes in it while it was still in a flat sheet form. This is all being done kind of against a picture that I found on the web. And so curled it into a tube and gave it just some soft solder. I don't think this part should ever get nearly hot enough to let go. But then I also drilled and tapped through it and put in this symmetric 2mm screw. That's what I had the drill and tap for. And that screw goes all the way through both layers. So at least at the bottom it has a mechanical connection. At the top here I used the carbide burr in the Dremel tool to grind away these crescent shapes and leave these prick points, and I bent them inward, and so they kind of grip the wick. The wick itself is just 4 inexpensive replacement oil lamp wicks. I was able to buy a package of 4 of them for I think $2.25. I zigzag stitched them together and then joined on the sewing machine, joined it at 2 places, and then this final place is just hand stitched together in order to fit the tubing in the center of the lamp. A fairly snug fit. And then finally I brushed some Elmer's glue all on it, on one side only, in order to give it some rigidity so that it doesn't have the tendency to flop over. It has a crispness. It feels a little bit like it's been starched or something. So there's the wick. There is the replacement wick carrier. And the final thing I need to do before I can burn this lamp is I need to manufacture a flame spreader, a little cap that fits in this hole that has a ring of holes so that the air comes up the tube and flows outward to the combustion point. They can be bought. At the time I began this project, there were none available on eBay. At the moment there is one on eBay, but it's 20 bucks, and we're trying to do this for free and or cheap, so 20 bucks is not going to happen. So anyway, I will make a flame spreader. And then finally I have some big mantles on the way from Hong Kong that are supposed to be for a street light or something. And judging by the picture, they look like they will be an appropriate size mantle to recreate the mantle that was on it. So once those come in, I will pick the video back up. Alright, so next I'm going to try to make a flame spreader. So the diameter should be 7/8, and it happens that I have this 7/8 inch brass tube. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this brass tube into this doming block and squeeze it in the vise as if it were a press, and squeeze this part down into this concave, and that should round over these edges to the middle. I'll round it over as far as I can without deforming the rest of the tube, and then I will turn on the lathe a brass cap to insert into that opening that should be a little smaller. That should give me the 45-degree bevel to cut a ring of holes in. The original had a ring of holes all the way around the perimeter, and it had a 45-degree bevel. I don't really have a way to stamp a thimble-shaped piece of brass. That's a little beyond what I can do. Trying to turn one out of solid brass is probably possible, but it seems like it would be a real pain to get it properly thin. So I'll just make this most of the shape and then plug the hole in the middle. So I lubed it up with some lard, gave it a good crank in the vise, and you can see it rounded it over pretty nicely. I think that'll work. I'll work on making a filler cap, and then it'll just be a matter of drilling the holes. So now I need to find a way to stop up this hole in the center. And you know me and my candlesticks, so this is turns out to be a Baldwin brass candlestick. The Baldwins that I found at the thrift shop or whatever are generally solid brass. I paid $1 or something for it, perhaps $2. This point is a nice kind of a taper. So I will put this in the lathe, turn this down to where it's smooth, and part that off right there, so that that tapered plug can kind of gravity hold right down in that hole. So you can see now that that kind of just plugs that hole up real nice. So I'll part it right at that transition line. Okay, so I now have my little, what's going to be the flame spreader, mounted into a collet, the collet mounted into a spindexer, the spindexer mounted in the mill vise. I just tilted it back and chose an angle, a degree, that looked like the drill bit would be penetrating relatively flat. It doesn't require a great deal of precision of just anything that's going to be in that bevel and is consistent. So the spindexer is divided into 36 holes. The original, looking at a picture, I found one that was 40 and one that was 34. So I think 36 will be fine. I have the drill bit mounted with just a little bit sticking out to try to get some rigidity. Okay, so it turns out with the drill bit that I'm using, I only had room for about 24 holes. So 24 holes it is. Now I will set the spindexer flat and start working on the holes. So looking at pictures of these on the web, these holes should extend about 1/3 of an inch from the top. So that's about as far down as I should go. But I really think I need another row of holes. So I'm going to try to angle it and put holes right here in this margin. Alright, so that worked fine. So there it is. Is it comparable to factory production? Certainly not. Should it work for a while? Absolutely. Alright, there is the new flame spreader installed. There is its gravity operating plug. I may still have to solder that. We'll have to see. But the next thing I know to do, here is an incredibly hokey mantle that I rigged up. A mantle and ordered off of eBay, and I've glued it on using fingernail polish. I don't yet know if that's going to work. I thought that I needed a larger mantle than like a Coleman lantern. This is larger, but that almost seems too large, so I may end up going back to the Coleman route. So anyway, I'm going to burn this one off outdoors and fill this thing up, see if it works. Alright, mantle attempt 1 did not work. Instead of burning and leaving the shell in place, it burned and shredded. I guess I had it stretched. I know I had it stretched, and apparently stretching it is not an option. So I'll try something else. So I've decided that I want to be able to tie the mantle on at the bottom. So I'm going to try to hammer a groove around the cone, a string groove where the string can hold the mantle tight. And in order to do that, I've got this piece of steel chucked up. It's actually a rear foot peg off a BMX bike. I'm going to put a groove into the steel so that it can become a mandrel, and then I can then use like a rounded over chisel and gently tap down into here, which should produce a groove in this cone, so that the cone will be reusable and I can tie a mantle on instead of messing around with trying to use some kind of a glue and everything. I think using the glue was more for the benefit of the mantle seller than it was for the benefit of the customer. So there is my groove. Just ground up a random piece of high-speed steel to the shape of a rounded groove. So I realized that a piece of round rod that's similar to the groove size is perfect. I have this stainless steel piece out of a toner cartridge or some such thing. And that end right there is just right. So, I have been holding the cap in place and then just lay the rod right there and tap downward. Tap all the way around and we'll have a groove. Okay, so now with a mantle tied on, I have a stainless steel piece of wire bent into a ring down inside there with that little hoop kind of hanging onto it. Let's burn this one off and see how it looks. Alright, that one I think would have been fine, except that it's raining outside and a single drop of rain crashed through it right there, right when it was its weakest. But I think I may still go ahead and try to burn it. Try to light the lantern with it and see how it does. It seems like it would be imperfect, but it also seems like it should physically work. Alright, so I've had it lit for maybe 1 minute now, just following the instructions I found on the web. The idea, I think, is to get the globe to incandesce, and you do that by adjusting the flame near or far. So like right there, the flame is really pretty low, but it puts off a lot of light. As far as I can see, it's not producing any smoke. And then to really get some light, you bring that up. Oh, yep, that. Too far and you get smoke. I might have to break down and buy the right mantle for it. I really hate to. $15. It's an outrage. An outrage, I tell you.